Just before the United Wrestling Federation was founded, I was just about at the end of my period of time in wrestling, and it kind of rejuvenated my career, took me into a whole new area of the scene in terms of promoting wrestling. 2002, the wrestling industry in New South Wales was on a bit of a downward trend. I decided to found the United Wrestling Federation of Australia, known also as UWF Australia. And at that time, we started off training a few young people at Bankstown PCYC with Ben Gold as the head trainer. Unfortunately, after a period of time, Ben moved interstate to the Northern Territory, and we had to stop at that stage. After an initial false start with starting UWF, I was about to appear on a wrestling show in Bankstown, and a young fella that I knew saw me in a newspaper, and he came up to me and said, "Are you a wrestler?" And I said, "Yes." He went on to tell me that he knew another young fellow that loved wrestling, and I said, "Well, why don't you get him to come down and see me?" This young guy did come down to see me, and he's somebody we now know as Mikey Lord. Mikey, he told me that he loved wrestling and wanted to get into wrestling, but at that stage of his life he couldn't afford the sort of exorbitant fees that it required to get into wrestling. I said to him, "Well, if you come down here, I'll train you for free." And that's what he did. But not only did he come down, he brought his brother and a bunch of his friends. And this in 2002 was the real start of the United Wrestling Federation of Australia. We set up a training facility initially at Bankstown, and then we got a second facility at Cabramatta at the police youth clubs. So word got around about this training, and more young people came along wanting to join in. And sooner or later we had 2 or 3 dozen people in training. Went through a comprehensive period of training, gave them all the fundamentals of wrestling up to the point where I thought they were just about ready to make a debut match. Certainly the best few of them anyway were. I used some of my contacts in wrestling to get the 5 best of the trainees booked in a show at Canberra, which they did, and they pretty much stole the show. The initial 5 teenagers who made their debut in Canberra did such a great job of it, inspired me to continue with the training. So we went along with a further period of training up until 2005, where it was decided by the end of 2005 it was time to start our own UWF show, which we did with the UWF Christmas Clash held at Bankstown PCYC. UWF Christmas Clash turned out to be a great show. We booked a combination of trainee UWF wrestlers and a number of experienced wrestlers from Sydney and also from interstate. The success of Christmas Clash, we then booked a further show at Bankstown PCYC about 3 months later. That too was a great show. By this stage we had more and more trainees coming through who were just about ready to make their debuts. So we started expanding into other areas. Regents Park Sports Club, Belfield RSL, with eventually getting a monthly show at Maryland's RSL. UWF was a lot different from many other wrestling organisations insofar it was mainly set up as a training federation, although we did bring in experienced wrestlers from other areas. The whole focus of UWF was about giving young people an opportunity in wrestling, and that is something that I'm most proud of, the fact that so many people got to train with UWF, develop their skills, debuted either for UWF or for other companies, and eventually found a fair bit of success around Australia. The really great thing about UWF, it started off as a group of friends and it gradually developed into a bigger and bigger and bigger group of friends. UWF started getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and we were certainly doing some of the hottest wrestling shows in Sydney at that stage, and in fact even across Australia. I feel that UWF Australia left a tremendous legacy. It came and went, but what it did was give opportunities for young people who would never ever have had the opportunity to break into Australian wrestling at the time. Some of those friendships endure, and some of the legacy lives on in many other companies across Australia, and I'm really proud of that. But what I'm also proud of is at that period of time, wrestling was going through a fairly rough period across Australia, but in particularly on the Sydney scene, and I think I played my part in helping keep wrestling alive in Australia at that period of time, which has now gone on to much bigger and better things, both in Australia and on the global stage, where Australian wrestling has a very positive future.